Just when you thought it was safe to go back in your local guitar store, Johnny comes with another guitar. Don't you just hate Johnny?
Guitar Stuff with John!
Welcome to another episode of Guitar Stuff with John. And boy, do I have a spectacular episode for you right now. I'm really excited about this because, well, the channel's growing. And with the growth of the channel, there's some really impressive builders reaching out to me. And this video here is a byproduct of that communication with the world of guitar builders. And so far, I've had a lot of fun because we've had, of course, Recording King, Gallagher, Boucher, of course, obviously Boucher. The custom shop at Hamamatsu, Yamaha, the L series guitars, Recording King, I think I mentioned, Gallagher. I mean, there's been some great builders, and there's more coming. James Martin from Ireland is sending me a guitar very shortly. And I've reached out to myself to a few companies that are unknown here for the most part. And that's my mandate. I want to show you great guitars you didn't know about. So what's really exciting to me about this episode is that I'm going to show you a guitar and a builder that we do know about, but you might not know the whole history. And the history is fascinating, and the same as the history of Yamaha, the Hamamatsu shop. It goes back, 54 years. It's an incredible place to get a guitar from. So, who I'm going to talk to you about today is a man named Sadeo, and later on, shortly thereafter, his son Hiroshi. They started building guitars right at the end of the Second World War, and they were building classical guitars, as most Japanese luthiers were at that time. And these weren't run-of-the-mill stuff. These were guitars that were being entered into the competitions around Europe and Asia and winning gold medals right along the builders that would eventually start building for Yamaha. And so there was a great explosion of lutherie in Japan after the war, and Sadeo and his son Hiroshi were part of that. Later on, his nephew became involved in building guitars. Now, their last name, Sadeo and Hiroshi, their last name was Yairi, or as we say in the West, Yairi, which is an incorrect pronunciation. But Sadeo Yairi and his son Hiroshi started a legacy that would last right until now. I'm going to show you part of the legacy in this video. Now, the story behind how all this happened is fascinating. By the time Kazuo Yairi started building guitars in the late 50s, early 60s, he, of course, had risen to the level of, just master luthier. He was a god of guitar building. There was a company in the United States that started in 1960, a very smart group of people that decided that, they wanted to have a distribution company in the United States to handle all kinds of different instruments, and they were called St. Louis Music. And in 1965, they approached Kazuo Yairi because they decided they wanted to have their own brand of guitars. And they decided to look in Asia for the builder. So they asked Kazuo Yairi if he would build these guitars under their name. And he said yes. He thought it was a good idea to be distributed in the United States. So Alvarez was born. St. Louis came up with the name, mostly because they were building classical guitars. That was the biggest thing that was happening. But as a couple of years went by, steel strings became more popular, and Kazuo started to build those as well. And there's an interesting history behind Japanese guitar builders. And the easiest way to explain it is this. Japanese guitar builders all, when they first started building steel string guitars in the 60s, they built for the Japanese market or the Japanese ears. And what that means is their guitars, most of them were heavily built, had beautiful high ringing trebles and sort of muted, colorful bass, but not loud. And these guitars had a very distinct sound, much unlike what we are used to here. And but they built guitars that stood the test of time and were usually incredibly ornate, especially when they came from the custom shop in Kani, Japan, where Kazuo was based. And so there were two things going on for many years. Kazuo was building the Alvarez guitars in factory settings for St. Louis Music, and they were being distributed all over North America. He was also still in his custom shop with his 20 luthier apprentices, building some of the most amazing guitars that were ever built. There's a massive audience for these instruments here in the West. There's Facebook groups, there's collectors clubs. These guitars are sought after, as the red label and orange label Yamahas are from the 60s, which were only factory instruments. Kazuo's were not factory at all. They were built in the shop, in Kani, in a shop, mind you, where the walls are built out of rosewood tongue and groove, and the floors are mahogany. And every piece of furniture in the shop in Kani is hand-carved by the luthiers. These guys, as in Hamamatsu, these guys took guitar playing and building really, really seriously. And the legacy is nearly 80 years old. This is how long they've been doing this, and how many years, and how it was passed down to Kazuo. And so a fascinating thing happened. The brand began to flourish. Alvarez flourished. They're a very good selling guitar all over the world, and people continued to order Yairi Guitars, and he continued to put them out as a secondary line, and St. Louis Music helped him. They didn't tell him, well, you can't put out your own name. Instead, they supported him as a luthier. He built their factory, had their factory instruments built, and they allowed him to retain his status as a luthier. And that's incredible that anybody would do that even in the 60s. And even at one point, Yairi even built guitars from 1980 to 1985 for George Loudon in Ireland. They were affiliated for 5 years. So there's a huge thing there, right? There's so many things going on in this world of instruments that we take for granted. A guitar just isn't a guitar. There's a history behind every guitar, and there's a history behind each builder. And I love a quote that Kazuo made before he died. He died in 2014, and it was a great loss. But his daughter still runs the company there, and all of the people that work with him, they're there. And his apprentices still build these guitars. There's a new master luthier, of course, who was trained by him. But there was a great quote he said when he talked about carving, spoke carving a neck and carving braces and, tuning tops. He called it listening with his hands. And that's one of the deepest, most touching things I've ever heard anybody say about guitar, because it's absolutely what a guitar player does. You can get a lot of things out of a guitar that go in your ears and make your heart big and make your souls fly and inspire you to play. But the real thing that's happening with a player is that he's listening with his hands. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I've ever heard. Now, 10 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Chris Meikle, who was the senior vice president of St. Louis Music, he became fast friends with Kazuo, of course, because the relationship was very long. Started in 1965 and was very successful. He took a Western guitar. He didn't mention to me which one, but I had a suspicion of what brand it was. took a Western-built guitar over to Japan to have a meeting with Kazuo, and he brought this guitar out. And he looked at Kazuo and he said, "This is the sound that the West expects from its dreadnoughts. And it's evolved into this." And Mr. Yairi-san, as they call him, took the guitar, played it, looked at it. He called his entire staff out of the shop into the office and said, "This is our new design. We're going to build guitars that sound like this." And it was a split-second decision on his part, but he trusted Chris. And Chris was right. Chris put a new direction in Mr. Yairi's head. And they started to design guitars that were, frankly, stunning. The Masterworks series of guitars coming right off the bench at Yairi to be marketed as Alvarez Yairi in the United States and beyond. And I've recently received a guitar from Chris, who reached out to me out of the blue with I just amazed that he did. And he said, "I'd like you to review these instruments because we're very proud of them. And I think they represent the memory of Yairi-san and what he did." And so they sent me this guitar. This is a guitar directly from the shop there in Kani, Japan. Came off their bench. The model number is the DYM60HD. So Dreadnought Yairi Model 60 Honduran. And the Honduran part is the thing that's really going to blow your mind. Kazuo bought wood his entire life, tone wood, and he put it away. Sometimes he didn't tell anybody where he put it or that he bought it. And there was a pile of wood near a parking lot where everybody used to gather for lunch, and they would pick through these, dozens and dozens and dozens of pallets of tone wood, not really knowing what some of it was. And one day they discovered that there was pallet after pallet of Honduran mahogany just sitting there under tarps, naturally aging. And when they went back and found out when he bought it in 1970. It had been sitting there for 50 years, aging. And so they just said, "This is the perfect wood for this model." And they were designing a guitar for a player already and decided this is the wood. And when they started building the guitars out of it, it became very evident that they had chosen wisely. So this guitar is 4+ Adirondack top and Honduran mahogany back and sides. I'm going to give you a very close look at this after. And it is one of the most lively instruments that I've ever encountered. I'll just let you hear it. Here it is. Very green. I've been playing it, but it's incredible. It's just, when I first took it out of the case, I couldn't put it down. It has the same injected spirit, that I attribute to Robin Boucher and the luthiers at Hamamatsu and Gallagher. This is a guitar that came off a bench, that had very few hands on this instrument, and it shows. It's incredible to play. The first thing you're going to notice about this guitar, besides the just pristine sound, is the way it plays. It has a huge, it has a wide neck, which looks and feels wide, but is easy. You don't feel cramped on it at all. There's all this space on the neck, which is incredible to have that profile, all that room, but you don't feel like you're stretching. And when you're playing things, it seems like a great big wide open playground. And even back here, when I first started playing it, I was like, oh, I'm missing a note here and there, because there's even more space back here. And it's somehow, I don't even know how to put my finger on it. And it's it really is something. It's another guitar where there's really no words for it. It's just, you have to play one to get a grip on the magic in it. The bottom end is just beautiful. So many voices. It's just incredible. And it's not like anything else I have in this room. And that's the magic of it. And the magic of this show. The Guitar Stuff with John idea is the idea to show you just how incredible some of these builders that we've been stumbling over our whole lives, we just aren't aware of how friggin' awesome they actually are. And so I want to take a close look at this guitar, and you're going to be amazed by this because I was amazed. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you the bridge of this instrument and tell you why it's so unique. Check this out. All right, so I've taken the liberty of using one of my prized Yamahas here that's still on loan from them. And I'm going to describe to you the structure of a guitar bridge. And you can really take a look at this and see how it works. It's very fascinating. So this is a traditional bridge. This is a piece of ebony that's glued to the top. And underneath the top is a plate made of maple that's underneath this section here, that the pegs and strings all go down through. So the string comes over the saddle, in through the hole, down through the top and the bridge plate, and the peg holds it in place, wedges the ball end into the bridge plate. That's how it's held in there, and that's how the top is vibrated and all these things. So here's some interesting physics about this that you don't think about. the strings are putting an immense amount of pressure to pull this entire assembly off the top. It's literally pulling that way all the time. And the downward pressure is concentrated just right here, where the string presses down on the saddle. That's the only downward pressure in the whole structure. And the only way to increase the downward pressure is to take this slot that's right here, where the string passes in front of the peg, and make that slot deeper that way. Force it to go towards the saddle, and it makes the string come off the saddle at a much greater, sharper angle. This creates more pressure, more tone, all these things. And you can see that these slots aren't very deep, and they shouldn't be. They don't need to be incredibly deep, but you can see that the string is not bending very much as it comes off the saddle right here. There's a very gentle angle, and so this is the way that all saddles and bridge design is. They've been using this for 100 years, so it absolutely works. And it's so common we don't think about it. You see this on every single guitar, but we just don't think about it. But there's a tremendous amount of physics and pressure and science right here, which is where all the sound comes from in a guitar, is this connection between the strings and the top, which is being forced to vibrate by this single piece of bone here. That's the transmitter that puts all the vibration into the top. And amazing, right? It's a very unlikely relationship. So you have strings trying to pull it off and strings pressing down on it at the same time. It's crazy. Now, take a look at Yairi's design. Now, I've seen this design many, many times in pictures and couldn't tell what this was. And when I seen it firsthand, it blew my mind. So here's the science he's using. Instead of putting the bridge all the way back here, he's inlaid a piece of ebony, super hard. Inlaid a piece of ebony, the top is there, and then the bridge plate underneath. So the same science exists. The string goes in the hole, the peg pushes it in, holds the ball in place, and there you go, right? But what he's changed is this. The bridge now has 0 upward pressure on it. There's none. The only pressure on the bridge and saddle is all down, 100%. There's nothing trying to lift off the top. And look at the string angle. The string angle is virtually just violent. It comes down very hard. It's pressing the saddle way down in the slot. It's causing a deeper, more solid connection between the saddle and the top. And then the strings and pegs are going directly into the top and the bridge plate. So, like, this design is incredible, and they call it a direct coupled bridge. And it is. It has 2 points of extreme vibration, where the strings are going directly into the plate, and then where they're creating all this downward force on this saddle and bridge. And frankly, this design just blows me away. I thought, when I first seen these guitars in pictures years ago, I thought, well, that's just a trick, a cosmetic, it's whatever, that's a big deal, right? When you see this in person and see how it's working, it blows your mind. It blew my mind. I can't even, when I started to look at this and realize what the ramifications were of this setup, I just said, well, Jesus, why didn't somebody think of this sooner? And it's incredible. It's very strange looking if you're used to seeing a traditional bridge and saddle setup, but I'm telling you, this is ingenious, and it works like a charm, obviously, because this guitar is just, it's loud, it sounds completely unfettered, the bass response is incredible, the treble, there's nothing dead on this guitar at all. And I believe that this is one of the very big parts of why it sounds so good and is so clean across all the different sonic images it projects. This is a very smart design. So let's look at the rest of the guitar. So here we start at that headstock. Such a famous design. There's the Yairi design. A and Y with a circle. Beautiful. Ebony tuners. Ebony and gold. Just gorgeous. Beautiful rosewood veneer on the headstock. And then down to this rosewood fingerboard, which is beautifully grained. Very plain, very, Spartan finish. And there's the dual Alvarez-Yairi symbol. Actually, the A is missing out of the symbol. It's two Yairi symbols on its side. And then down to this beautiful Adirondack top. And the grain in this top is really something. It's gorgeous. Very simply purfled. There's our magic bridge set up again, direct coupled bridge. It has a very nice tapered invisible pickguard. Gorgeous abalone rosette, single line with an ebony inlay around as well. And yeah, this is, it's beautifully done. Beautifully done. So there we go. Let's take a look at the back, because that's where things really start to heat up. The first thing I want to look at and take note of is this neck. This neck is quite incredible. And the reason is that it is hand carved, and it starts out up here with its 1 23/32 nut width, which is a very odd measurement. And it starts out as a soft V cut. And somewhere around the 5th or 6th fret, it turns into a soft C cut. And what that does is it creates this incredible, I spoke earlier about this sort of freedom playground that this neck feels like. And that's why, because down below, the soft V creates all the space for your hand. And as you move up the neck, your hand position changes, so the neck changes as well. And that's something I've never seen on a guitar. A double profile, soft V up here to soft C down the neck. Incredible. Now here's this Honduran mahogany, and again, this guitar is very difficult to film because it's so reflective, and we just see this incredible grain. It's a dark, kind of a burgundy kind of grain. So gorgeous. The markings in it and the little imperfections, that comes from this species of mahogany. And we see the sides are the same. The sides just have this deep, deep amber grain. The mahogany, oh, it's so good, so good. I love mahogany guitars so much. And I think mahogany is pretty well the king of the tone woods. It has the best of all worlds. It has the warmth, it has the color, it has the treble, and it has projection like crazy. And this stuff is so old. This has been aging for 50 years before it was ever put on the bench. And again, it's an incredible piece of work. And it's got a beautiful maple strip right down the back here. And I usually do these close-ups with a voiceover, but there's so much to talk about in this guitar that I kind of had to do this like this, because there's so many things I need to say about it when when looking at it closely. It's just perfection. The fit and finish is unbelievable. So there's our close-up of this wonderful guitar, a product of 80 years of design and lutherie. And sort of the final thing he left us with before passing on to the great bench in the sky, where I hope he's still building them. And yeah, what a guitar. What a guitar. Incredible. So there you go. There's the 60 Honduran. Like, what are you going to do, right? DYM60HD. It's incredible. It really is. I don't know what else to say. I appreciate St. Louis Music and Alvarez for letting me do this. This is a really cool thing and part of the community that I'm hoping to create here on the channel. And I couldn't be happier with getting asked to talk to you about this instrument. Again, the sound is, the proof is in the pudding, right? Thanks, Kazuo. I'm telling you, boy, you left us a good one. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on Guitar Stuff with John. If you like what you see here with us, hit that subscribe button. If you want to join the private membership, hit the join button. Always hit the notification bell so you know when we're doing new things. And I gotta just play this cool guitar for a while longer. See you next time.